And good evening to you, and thanks for joining us for this special edition of 17 News at 5 o'clock. I'm Jim Scott. Tammy Melchuk has the night off. We begin this special edition with news from Capitol Hill. In about an hour from now, President Trump will address a joint session of Congress and the nation for the first time since his return to the White House. The theme for tonight's speech is the renewal of the American dream. The president is expected to focus on his domestic agenda, including new trade tariffs that took effect overnight, as well as sweeping efforts to shrink the size of federal government and immigration reform. The president will also address ongoing negotiations to end two wars overseas, and it's all coming just days ahead of a possible government shutdown. Well, joining us in studio now tonight, 17 News political analyst Kathy Abernathy on the right and Neil Sinapa on the left. Thank you both for being here. Let me start with this. Aside from the immigration crackdowns that we saw here at home and across the country in recent weeks, perhaps the biggest headline from the president's first 6 weeks in office is the public thrashing he gave Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office last Friday, telling him that if Ukraine can't work a peace deal with Russia's Vladimir Putin, the U.S. is out. Now, the president has temporarily suspended all military aid to Ukraine, and Zelensky today posted on X that he is ready to work under Mr. Trump's leadership to get a lasting peace in Ukraine. Kathy, my first question to you, does the president owe Congress and the American people an explanation for his, what's been characterized as his ramped up animosity towards Volodymyr Zelensky and Ukraine and the diplomatic crisis that this has caused within Europe and NATO? What do you think?
Well, you know, it's just been a couple days since Zelensky was at the White House. And as you recall, it wasn't so much that Trump did something different. Zelensky agreed in the room before the press conference. Then when he got to the press conference, it was off. I want more security. I want more this and that. Well, that's not what you negotiate on TV. That's what the American people in the world got to see was the inside of something that they probably shouldn't have been at. It should have been where they were in the back room, worked out, which is what both the vice president and the president thought. Appears to be things are going on. I think Zelensky went to England and other countries in Europe, and they said, you know what? We don't have the kind of money to provide security. You better get back in the room.
But they did show solidarity with Zelensky and Ukraine.
Well, sure, but I think we're all there. I think the point is, how do we resolve this? Unless the United States just spends money on it for the next 10 years and more people get killed.
Certainly. Okay, Neil. First of all, will you be watching tonight's speech? And secondly, if so, what do you want to hear from the president on the war in Ukraine?
Yeah, I'll be watching. Maybe not right on time, but I will watch it tonight. I think what I want to hear, you know, I mean, I think really what we're going to hear is Donald Trump has made a lot of bets. You've talked about them just earlier. He's made bets on Ukraine. He's made bets on the tariffs. Starting with Ukraine, I mean, he's changed a relationship we've had with that country for several decades. And, you know, I mean, even the shift here is massive. It's a huge shift in foreign policy for us to essentially play neutral, or maybe even, you know, play to the side of advancing Russia's wants and needs in these negotiations, from protecting an ally in Ukraine. And I mean, we need to go back to basically the 1990s, and why we are an ally of Ukraine is because they dismantled their nuclear weapons with guarantees that Russia and the United States would support them. You have Secretary of State Marco Rubio. When he was in that room that night, he looked like a houseplant. Yeah. That's what he was.
You mentioned the new tariffs. Let me just move on to that. We have limited time here. New tariffs on imported goods from China, Mexico, and Canada are now in effect. Analysts say American consumers are going to feel this pinch in the pocketbook, from cars to groceries. Mr. Trump says it's time to give our trading partners a taste of their own medicine. Neil, lawmakers on Capitol Hill are split on this one, particularly those in farm states, including California. What say you?
Yeah, so I mean, this is another bet that Donald Trump is making. He's making a bet to say that what these tariffs are actually going to do is bring manufacturing back to the United States, rather than increase prices for for the American people. And what he has to worry about is, yes, he has the entire government right now, but it might not be the case in 2 years. I think when we see his actual State of the Union in a year, we're going to see, did this bet play out? Did manufacturing actually come back, or did prices skyrocket for the American people and continue to go up while Donald Trump enriched his friends by his tax cuts?
Well, Kathy, what do you want to hear from the president in his defense of these trade tariffs tonight?
Well, don't think we haven't been living with tariffs against us for years. Everything that they grow, everything that they produce down there, they don't tax. They don't tax production. They tax consumption. Okay, in this country, we tax business on their production, and so our country starts out in the negative against these other countries because we have the burden of our tax on our prices. But you know, Trump's goal has been to let's get more manufacturing back in this country. In terms of farmers, well, I know when we used to just buy watermelon in the summer because California was growing it. Now everything is you want it 12 months a year. So maybe they'll pay more for a watermelon from South America. I like to buy produce that's made in California or U.S. But it isn't that we can continue this system where they pay their workers pennies on the dollar. We pay substantial pay, and we get punished because their stuff comes in here cheaper. So I think I think Canada already, and the other reason for the tariffs was to get Canada to get to work on this fentanyl, which they just appointed someone last Thursday to head up their fentanyl defense system. So they need to get to work on it.
That was one of the goals, is to get their attention so that they can clamp down on the movement of these drugs from their countries to ours.
They need to invest money to do that.
Perhaps the most important part of the president's agenda has been crackdowns on immigration, and we've certainly seen that here at home. President is promising much more in the way of immigration reform. So, Neil, how does the president sell this to Congress tonight?
I mean, he can sell it to Congress. I feel like for the most part, the Republicans are behind this president, whether it's because they're just too afraid of the base that he's been able to build within the Republican Party, but it's Trump's party. He's taken it over. In 2016 wasn't the case. Now it really is. And I think it's going to be a hard sell, I think, mostly to folks that are going to have to rely on that labor. Like Kathy was saying, right, we do pay a little bit better in the United States, but we do rely on undocumented immigrants in our farms. We do. It's 100%. If you ask farmers here and in the Midwest, they will tell you that if undocumented immigrants cease to exist in the United States, our agricultural system would collapse.
Okay, I'm being given the wrap, but I got to give you the last word, Kathy.
Well,
on immigration.
On immigration, number one, criminals that are continuing to commit crimes here and in these sanctuary states like this place we live in, the Trump administration is going in and rooting and getting them out, and that makes all of us sleep better at night. So that's number one priority. I don't think there's anyone in this country, I can't imagine even Neil, that wants illegal people that are here that have broke the law there, got out of jail there and ran here and commit crimes to be able to stay.
Okay,
get them out.
I got to wrap it up.
Per capita, undocumented immigrants commit less crime than U.S. citizens.
Neil Sinatra.
I've never been accosted by an undocumented immigrant.
I got to wrap you up.
Have either.
All right, Neil Sinatra and Kathy Abernathy, thanks as always for your time. I appreciate it. Never enough time.